Welcome everyone to another episode of Pick Up and Play. My name is DJ Switch. I'm the DJ and MC for the Portland Retro Gaming Expo, and I'm very, very excited to bring to you a really special interview today. My guest is V, the board president for MAGFest, the Music and Gaming Festival, which originated on the East Coast, has in recent years expanded out to the West Coast with their MAGWest event. And so we're talking about a bi-coastal music and gaming festival that is one of, if not the largest stage for nerdy musicians, music acts that play video game covers, music acts that do nerdcore hip hop, geek rock, all of that stuff under that nerdy music umbrella. MAGFest is the Woodstock. Like, MAGFest is the big show for most of the folks in that community. So I am so excited that I get to talk to V today, who, as a matter of fact, lives right here in Portland. And she and I have become friends by hanging out not only at nerd music events, but also running into each other at other events, like, for example, the Portland Retro Gaming Expo. And so we're going to get into all of that. We're going to have a very, very in-depth discussion about how important it is when you're running large events like this to be as inclusive as possible, and inclusive in ways that you don't necessarily think about. One of the things that kind of sparked this conversation, and obviously we'll dive into that kind of early on in the discussion, is my recent event at Vault 31 Bar. Many of you who watch this show may already know Vault 31 Bar has been an absolutely fantastic sponsorship partner for this show. And a couple of weeks ago, I actually hosted a lo-fi VGM event sponsored by Curaga Records and a local record store called Final Form. And it was a combination birthday party and lo-fi music event where I was going to create a very chill and welcoming space for everybody to be able to relax and enjoy just kind of a low-key evening of video game music, some LED candlelight. I gave away some free records. It was really a massive success. In fact, we filled almost every seat in the space. And it was so much fun, even on a date like 420, where a lot of folks were at home celebrating 420 in their own way. We still managed to fill the place, and we had a lot of folks after the fact going, "Hey, when's the next one? When's the next one?" So, I'm going to make that announcement regarding the next lo-fi event in the discussion of this show. So keep an ear out for that. But one more thing that I wanted to throw out to you all before we get into the main part of the episode today. There was a lot to talk about. And V and I think partly because our personalities are very, very similar, we talked a lot, and it ended up being a very, very long episode. So there was a few things that I had to cut. With V's permission, I trimmed down a sort of like edited version for YouTube, and the full extended version will be available on Patreon, along with my usual Lost Level, which is Patreon exclusive. So if you're a subscriber of the Patreon, or if you would like to check out the extended version, make sure you go to patreon.com/DJSwitchPDX, and you can join us over there. Check out the extended version of this really cool and very special discussion that I had with V from MAGFest. And you can also check out the extra stuff that I've recorded from all of my other episodes. I have a series called Lost Levels that is Patreon exclusive, and every single guest that I've had, I've been able to record extra content specifically for the Patreon. So I'm very proud of that work. Some of my spiciest stuff has gone up on Patreon exclusively. So I'd love to see you over there. In the meantime, let's get into the discussion today with V from MAGFest. V, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, of course. I'm excited to chat it up with you, man.
Yeah, absolutely. We met about a little over a year and a half ago at a Mega Ran show here in Portland.
Yes, yes. I believe it was Megaran, and then we had Shubzilla and Bill Beats opening up for him, and then that's also where I believe I discovered the Chris Waffle explosion, which that was the most beautiful discovery, by the way. To be clear, for those who are listening, if you haven't heard about Chris Waffle in the Portland, like Beaverton, Canby area, like Chris and Sarah Spoon are just a glorious like power couple. Like you have to go check them out. They're insane. But yeah, we met at that Megaran show about a year ago over at Dante's, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I met Chris at a Kirby Crackle show almost 10 years ago.
Oh, see, you're all buddy buddy with everyone here because you've been here. Like I,
I've
I
been here.
just got here. I just got here.
And we're so glad to have you. I genuinely, and I mean this, there's this weird like main character energy in Portland where everybody kind of like lives like their own story. It's exhausting. And so like when we have transplants, a lot of times like it's a weird adjustment. But then occasionally we get some really cool folks that like aren't completely just only about their own shit that move here and introduce themselves to you at a nerdcore event. And so like immediately after you and I connected at that Mega Ran event, then like I saw you at the Retro Gaming Expo and I met your partner and I got to like kick it with you at a couple of other things that we've done, you know, around town. And then like most recently you showed up at my birthday party.
Hell yeah.
Like
Us
it's
Aries, we got to stick together. It's Aries season. It's our season, fire season. I'm here for
hell
it.
yeah.
Also, what you were putting on for your birthday too was really effing chill. Like I was happy to show up, have a chill time, have a chill drink, hang out with friends. You're in your zone where you are just I am DJing some really lo-fi, just like awesome classic beats. And I just want everyone to have a good time. Like you set the premise of the night. You're like, I want people to feel comfortable, which is awesome because my 30-year-old ass, I can't keep screaming at people in venues. So to have the chill music for your birthday, and you're like, wow, this is my birthday. This is also for y'all. Like it's such a selfless like movement. Like thank you so much for giving that to the community.
We're supposed to be talking about you tonight.
Oh, that's fair.
But since it came up, I will just say very quickly,
Do it.
couple
I
of
just
things.
reversed the podcast. Now I'm interviewing you.
No, we absolutely have to get to your stuff, and I want to learn a lot more about you tonight. But since it came up, I will say just a couple of really quick things about that lo-fi VGM party. So the first thing is that I found out, as far as I can tell, and as far as anyone at Curaga Records can tell, it's the first of its kind.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anyone anywhere is actually doing like a publicized sponsored lo-fi event. Curaga Records is sponsoring other events at some other conventions as like one-off parties that have not happened yet. So at this point right now, my lo-fi party is potentially the first in history. Or at least like the first of its kind.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely the first that Curaga has been a part of. The other thing I will say about that party, and I haven't announced this yet, but it's my podcast and I'll do what I want.
Do it. Plug away.
We're looking at turning this into a monthly. And
Yes.
May 18th is the date that we have penciled on the calendar right now. I just got the artwork back. I just confirmed one of the sponsors, and I'm looking to add a second sponsor. So I'm kind of like working on that. But I don't want to work too long on that because like it's coming. If you know, that's the thing about a monthly is like once you knock down one party, like the next one's on its way. You got to get moving. So
Yes.
so yeah, so this is gonna be a regular thing. And funny enough, Vault 31 Bar, who does sponsor this show, and also hosted the event with me. They literally the Monday after that event announced that they have purchased the space next to theirs. It was like a yoga studio or a dance studio,
Oh, I'm
and
so happy for them.
they're going to be opening a all ages cafe that is an extension of the Vault 31 bar space. So it's going to be completely gaming centric, but it's going to be all ages. They're going to do coffee bar. They're going to do breakfast options. It's going to be more of like a morning/daytime thing versus the bar, which is more of a nighttime thing. And obviously, like, kids can't hang out at the bar, which is unfortunate. And there's a lot of us that are with child now.
Mhm.
And so I think it's really, really cool that they're being considerate of that part of the nerd community because, if there's one thing that I've learned about them, if there's one thing that I've learned doing this lo-fi VGM event, and honestly, just from, you know, 15-ish years of playing around with nerds at nerd parties and cons and stuff, like, it's about inclusivity, right? Like
Absolutely.
it's about welcoming everyone. And unfortunately, like, alcohol laws being what they are, it means anybody under 21 isn't welcome. And so they want to create a space where we can welcome those folks.
So that's something that's a really good point that you're bringing up, which now I'm going to flip it back to me.
Yes, please. Let's go.
Yeah. So I I'm V. Hello. Hi.
Hi.
Welcome. Anybody who's listening at home or on a nice like walk out in the rain, depending on what Portland is feeling these days. Um, yeah, I'm someone who regularly and passionately volunteers for these very nerd centric events. So I have been doing this for a very long time in the Bay Area in California, where I would volunteer for events such as a fan anime convention, or I have volunteered myself at like even like music festivals. Even if my friends were having like a show, I would volunteer and help with like maybe with their merchandise or whatever. So I've been very involved as the helper, right? I've been somebody who has been considerably, I want to help you be successful. I'm a tool to you, not to be used, but to be like helpful and effectively helpful, right? And so I kind of found myself just as victim as somebody who was the oldest child in my family. I did basically like help my mom raise like two siblings. Yep, yep. I'm saying, man, like this Aries energy, like Aries older sibling, like it's a special thing.
Did
So
you get
all to
along?
say,
Did you get along with your younger siblings?
oh
Like
no.
growing up? Yeah, yeah, no, me neither. So
Oh no. Okay. I
I
mean,
have I have a little sister. We didn't really start getting along until she was 30.
yeah, yeah, no, same thing with my sister. Like it was always like head to head, like what is the battle today? What
Yeah.
am I gonna be served for breakfast? Like that it was always something like that with my family every single day.
Yeah.
But yeah, me and my sister, I can say that we do get along much better these days,
Yeah.
um,
Same.
through like a sense of maturity. And I've also moved out. I was the first person out of the nest when I hit 20. So that gave her some space to really kind of blossom as a person through her own, like, personality challenges into becoming challenges to something that she can accept as herself and be like, yeah, this is who I am as a person. And this is who I am without someone over me about doing dishes or whatever the case may be, or picking me up from school.
Yeah.
So yeah, all to say, where was I going with that? Yeah, so in the Bay, yeah, I often would help out with a lot of events because, it was something to just kind of get away from. I grew, I mean, I can speak for everybody here who's listening. I grew up playing PlayStation 64, the Super Nintendo, like you name it, right? Like I grew up playing all those
Yeah.
games, and a lot of those games are often inherited from like my uncle or my cousins and stuff like that. And now as an adult, like where I'm in like proper music school, right? Like, let me listen to Brahms and study like the chord progressions and all that shit.
Yeah.
Um, I'm like, okay, here is music land. Here is the land of like me trying to get my degree, but also like, what do I need to do to still authentically feel like myself? And so that was me volunteering at these events. So I started off with Fanime for a while, and that was, fun for what it was, but I was also very young and also ready to party. So like, This is not me speaking on behalf of Fanime. I'm only going to speak on behalf of the people who probably go to Fanime, but it's very party centric, like especially that a lot of us 90s kids, like in the early 2000s, like in the early 2000s, like we were ready to like act a fool.
Yeah.
So of course, like, you know, there's alcohol and like maybe there's some other suggestive things.
I don't know what you're talking about. That never happens at parties.
Right. At these parties. And there's also a lot of flirting, right? And a lot of people just like very much so interacting with each other, saying the most out of pocket things for the sake of comedy.
Oof. Yeah.
And so, yeah, of course, like, you know, just kind of doing that. So I did Fanime for a little bit, and then I fell in love with MAGWest, which stands for Music and Gaming. MAGWest is, which I'll speak a little bit more on after I get to my point,
Yeah.
is a smaller MAGFest version of the event with like about 2,000 people per year, and it's held over at the DoubleTree. And I fell in love with that event because while Fanime is very anime fans, like all the different anime, even the newer anime, which some of the new anime I'm not really into. I'm very much so into the older stuff, like the very city pop centric anime.
Right.
I go to MAGWest and it's music and it's gaming. And I get to hear the old like Sonic themes or the Super Mario themes in like fusion, like in jazz fusion or in gospel or in just in rock even, right? Like it was really like eye-opening to me about how my scope in music school was just so thin. And then I get to see this whole new like um universe of how music is celebrated. Like I went from like this music is a chore to this music is celebration, and I feel more closely identifying with it more.
Yeah.
So yeah, I fell in love with MAGWest and I started to volunteer for MAGWest for a while. But now some years later, now from like being my party side to now my a little bit more conservative on the partying because, you know, my knees, my back, and you know, I'm tired of waking up hungover. I want something that's a little bit more calm, but also, like you said, there are people who have children now, right? Us 90
Yeah.
kids, we're not young and in our 20s anymore. We are definitely, we have families. We have maybe even parents who now live with us because they need to be taken care of. We are
Yeah.
actually probably more established in our careers where we're probably director level people.
Yeah.
And so as much as like we would love to party, our capacity for it has now changed. And so now we're trying to like shift gears and figure out like how do we create legacy in the things that we enjoy to our
Yeah.
children that is not partying. How do we make it a welcoming environment for them? So
Yeah.
that way, when we bring them to these conventions, we're not ashamed of the activity that's going on, but now we can be more proud of like, oh, I can sit down and play board games with my child,
Yeah.
and I don't have to worry about Booty Cheeks McGee walking across the way in her cosplay, or even in his cosplay, and I have to cover my
Sorry.
child's
I'm
eyes.
sorry. What was that? What cosplay was that you were?
I just made up a name just like Booty Cheeks McGee.
Yeah, right. That's yeah. Yeah, I think we've all seen that cosplay.
Just name your favorite dead or alive woman. Like just just name your favorite dead or alive character.
I think name your favorite character. Full stop. But you know, I completely hear what you're saying. I do have to correct one small thing. It's so incredibly sweet of you to say us 90s kids.
Oh, are
I
you
literally
80s
just turned
baby?
40.
Okay, you're still a millennial though. I'm so sorry.
I believe I'm classified technically as an elder millennial.
Yes,
Uh,
yes.
but yeah, no, I completely hear what you're saying. I think you're absolutely right. The idea of inclusivity, and I especially think like in the nerd space, because nerds often, I'm not going to say always, but like often are very progressive, right? And so the ideas of inclusivity, usually when you hear that term, you immediately think race, gender, class, orientation, and like this kind of like really big, really specific list of things that are sort of societally considered under the umbrella of inclusivity. But then when you talk about especially in the nerd space where it's a lot of toys, a lot of animation, and a lot of like movies and stuff like that, TV shows. Inclusivity can also mean people who are of different ages, and not just, you know, like retired folks, like much older folks, but also people who are younger, like finding a way for a 40-year-old to hang out with a 15-year-old and have it not be weird, right? Um, if my niece wants to go, perfect example. About it's about 9 years ago now, actually. My wife and I took our niece to her first big nerd convention event, right? And it was Rose City Comic Con here in Portland, and she absolutely loved it. She thought it was absolutely incredible. She loved the costumes. She loved all the cool like vendors and loved all the cool artwork. And it just blew her adorable little mind, right? I think she was like 6. No, not even. I think she was 5. And then a year and a half later, my wife took her off her ice cream or something and came back to the house. Because we would regularly babysit, you know, so that my wife's brother and his wife can, you know, go have a nice dinner out or whatever. And so my wife comes back to the house with the niece, and she goes, "You're never gonna guess what she our niece kept asking my wife, when are we going back to Halloween bookstore?" What? The Halloween bookstore. Because of the costumes and the comic books, she kept referring to Comic-Con as Halloween bookstore, and is hands down to this day the most
That
adorable thing I've ever heard.
is precious because it's her trying to associate from
It-
things that she was already doing as a child. And now she gets to see this whole new world. And it's like, oh, actually, there's a new term for you, honey. Like, that's amazing. That's adorable.
Everyone dresses up like it's Halloween, but then also it's because of comic books, so bookstore.
I love it.
um, so I think inclusivity can mean a lot of stuff, and it's so interesting to me, especially in the nerd space, how many different things it can mean. I know that it's something that you all you're because you're I haven't I would have said something in the intro that gets recorded later. But as the president of the board for an event like MAG, I'm sure that's a pretty common and conscious thing to consider is how to make sure your event is as inclusive as possible, right?
Absolutely. So, yeah, just to be clear, inclusivity is a very, very heavy term that really calls for a lot of responsibility and intentionality. I'm just going to say that up and foremost, like
Yeah.
lots of intentionality. It's a huge, huge project because it's so broad. Like we captured already like the age side of inclusivity. So we're not talking about, just millennials or older millennials. We're also talking about the generations that come after us, but also how do we make it inclusive for people who are older than us who kind of set the pace, right? For example, at MAGFest last year, we had Cynthia Harrell,
Mm,
who is famously known for singing the Snake Eater theme from Metal Gear Solid. And we also had Marty McDonald, who is most famous for the Halo music and theme music, right?
right.
Now, while those folks, they're iconic, right? They're the ones who created a culture for us 90s kids. And we're the ones who are now responsible for letting people know, like the younger kids know, like who they are. But how do we also make this environment friendly for them who are older? And like I was talking about, my knees, my back, my capacity. How do we make sure it's comfortable for them? Because events as large as MAGFest, which gets up to about 25,000 people per year over at the National Harbor in Maryland, um, it can be overstimulating, like
Yeah.
real fast. And not to call out Cynthia on the podcast because she's just a thrill to work with. Like she is just wonderful.
That's why,
But
by the way, just real quick, that's why I was laughing when you mentioned Cynthia's name, because like I don't think iconic even does it justice. Like
no,
that theme song is beyond iconic.
yes, everyone knows who that song, or sorry, who she is, the song,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh
to
yeah.
say iconic waters it down. I think I'm just trying to find words in the moment, but like
Yeah.
legendary.
Yeah,
But I
absolutely.
do remember that she has called me a couple times. She pulls me to the side, she grabs my like wrist, and she's like, "I've been walking around here, and my feet, my dogs are just on fire." And I'm like, "How can
Yeah.
I help you?" Like, because a part of me is like, it will be inappropriate for me to ask her, like, "Do you need a piggyback ride?" But like, also like,
Can't
it's a
do
large
that.
event, and so it's just kind of like, speaking on the age side of things, like, how do we make it more comfortable for those folks too who also want to enjoy themselves and soak in all the appreciation and affirmation that they're probably receiving every 10 steps as they're like, just cruising through the event.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, just also on the inclusive side too is something that's very like deeply important to me is also racial diversity,
Mm.
diversity of culture.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, excuse me, I work really hard on that because I'm not even going to save feelings on this podcast. And if anybody has a problem with it, you can come talk to me directly. I'm actually really nice. So, but I do have some girlfriends who are not as nice. So I'm just going to like
Right.
lay it down like that.
I think we both do.
Yeah. But a lot of the times in these nerd spaces, it's very white male dominated.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the people who come in and who are featured at these events, like it's just like the talent is like, it's just mostly white men. And so like, how do we make sure that the people who are featured and the audience that are coming to come see, like, and have a good time at this event, how do we make sure that the talent reflects the attendee base, right? Because the
Right.
attendee base is always going to be super diverse.
Mm-hmm.
But people like me, I'm inspired when I see Cynthia sing. I'm inspired when I see like Megaran on stage and like rhyming with the nerdy people of color collective, right?
Yeah.
But if I see like, a bunch of white guys like playing back to back to back, like I feel less inspired and I feel like it's not a space for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, how do I feel inspired? Well, if I don't get that, then how do I make a legacy be after my experience, making sure that people after me feel that sense of like, inspiration and how they can like really optimize themselves to get on the same level, or even just feel like, wow, my people out there are really doing the damn thing. And makes me feel really good that like there's some good representation here. And so all to say, it's really important when you're booking artists or you're booking people, even panelists, like be mindful about who you're booking, right? So
Right.
if you notice that it's all a bunch of white talent, and not to say that they're not talented, because they are, I've been to a number of panels where there's been some white men who are fucking hilarious. I will shout out some folks in a second, but just be intentional, right? So like if you see like a diversity talk, bring them in. Like they got some shit to say. If you see even like a comedian who is like a person of color, bring them in. They got some shit to say. It's just as valuable as the other people that you're bringing in. But what sometimes will happen is that internal bias will come like knocking in your head. And you're like, oh, if that person looks like me, strides like me, has the same thing like me, you're internally like clicking in, being like, I want this person in because like, whatever. But like you're forgetting to also bring in maybe more Black folks, maybe more Latino folks, more even like indigenous people in gaming, which I'm sure exists.
Mm-hmm.
So just like if you're over conscious about thinking that you're just doing it as a check mark, get that out of your head. Like it's not just a check mark. Like to say like I need more indigenous people at my event, bring more indigenous people into your event, invite them in.
Right.
And even if you're like, I got more indigenous people in, that's a clear, wonderful first step to start. So then that way, at least they're in the space, they're invited to this space, they feel welcome to the space. And then like follow up with them, see how their experience is, because inclusivity is so loaded. check in with those people who are new to those spaces, making sure that they're comfortable and that they're supported and they're also well taken care of. If I bring in an act that's just a bunch of white guys, it's kind of interesting. I don't really have to worry about them as much. If anything, my support can be a little overwhelming just to make sure that they're well taken care of. But I know on the people of color side, if I'm constantly checking in, they're like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. Like, one example that I will close this little tidbit on is like Omega Sparks, um, who is one of the guys for Game Breakers, like that rap duo.
Mm.
He was doing a panel, and the event at the time, you had to wear a mask. Like, we did have a mask mandate. And he's like, shit, I don't have a mask. I'm like, hey, let me hook you up with a mask. I'll be right back. And so I ran
Yeah.
away, came back, gave him a mask. I actually gave him a pack of 5. And he's like, thank you so much for taking care of, like, he was just so gracious, just so like appreciative. And
Yeah.
like, yeah, dude, I got you. And like, that speaks levels, right? Like, even though it was a small gesture, it just shows that like, I'm looking out for you because I give a shit, you know? Whereas like other events, I haven't seen that same type of care for people of color, or even like seeing like people of color highlighted. So inclusivity on that level is also very important. So in that way, yeah, it's also just very important.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I think one of the really beautiful things about working in nerd music, because a lot of folks listening to this may not know that I actually had a podcast for a little while called Radio Free Nerdcore, where I got to sort of meet and interview a lot of the folks within the nerd music community. Um, and it was kind of a unofficial spinoff of a different podcast called Radio Free Hipster that was around for quite some time. And put me on to a lot of the nerd acts that I then would eventually go on to feature on my own show. And it was really, really cool to see just what an incredibly diverse group of people are interested in the same nerdy video game music and the same, really nerdy hip hop stuff that's built on video game beats and loops. It, and then you get further down the rabbit hole of nerd music and you start to see these bigger bands like 8-Bit Big Band or your own band, 7th Street, like, and the amount of diversity that's represented in those bigger groups that are beyond the 3, 4, 5 person stage acts. Right. And so, it's really incredible to see, an example in a space where, obviously I'm not going to be naive enough to say there aren't problems, because we both know there are. But to see an example of what like actual diversity and inclusivity might look like if we give it the chance to be what it could be. And I've seen that in nerd music since I showed up a little over a decade ago. And I've seen that work continue to be done, and it's really incredible to watch.
Yeah, I noticed that too, that it's getting better. Like, the inclusivity component is getting much, much better. But there's been people who've been like knocking down the doors with a sledgehammer, being like, let me in. It kind of
Yeah.
reminds me of like the Eric Andre clip, just like, let me in, like, and
Yeah.
that, like, while that looks really goofy, it's really true. Like, I've been I can say my number of times where I felt very excluded as a musician really kind of paved the path for me to be on this current path to making sure like there has to be inclusion in the spaces that I'm in, or I'm out. Like, or if there's a space that says that they're doing it and they're lying about it, I will come in and say like, actually, you should probably work on this, or you should probably looking into this, or being more intentional about this. Like, put demographic information on your surveys. Like, I'm going to repeat it again, put demographic information on your surveys,
Yeah.
and see who's responding. And if it's not enough, people of color responding, then you as somebody who is running these events needs to brainstorm and figure out like, why are people not responding to these?
Or
Like,
not,
is
or
it,
not coming.
yeah, or not coming? Like,
Yeah.
it's an empowerment issue. And that later, if you don't solve those issues soon, it later bites you in the ass. Like, I've seen it many times with different events where it's like there's always been an inclusivity issue, a DEI violation. And it's because someone has spoken up, whether if it's like a women issue, a POC issue, even like a body issue, right? Like, us as being plus size people, like there's also inclusivity that needs work on in that area. And if someone doesn't hit the nail on that, or even considers like what is needed to better accommodate these communities, it will later hit you in the butt. Like it will.
Yeah.
The internet is fast. Like information will just, like, if you try to hide it, someone will come get you. That's just what it is. Like someone might come get me for talking about this. And I'm just like, I try to speak my truth. And I mean,
Look out for that internet. They'll come get you.
yeah. So so I think it's just like really, really important. I kind of lost sight of what you initially asked, but yeah, like just get it done. And also,
I don't know
somebody
if I've
who
asked a question yet. We've just kind of been hanging out.
ranting, yeah.
Yeah. Have I asked a question yet this entire I don't know. We're halfway through the podcast. And no, I'm not complaining. This is great. I
Yeah.
just
So
don't know if there was a question.
I actually, now that I remember, so some of the moments of where I felt like very excluded in spaces where it kind of drove the pace for me to be where I'm at now.
Yeah.
I'm gonna rat on it, is the jazz community. It's the classical community. And the reason why I say it like that is I've been to so many jam sessions in my 20s where I showed potential.
Yeah.
I showed that I was capable of being with one of the guys. That my name was never called called to bat into being an ensemble with these jazz ensembles.
Yeah.
To play just normal standards, right? Like there will never be another you or autumn leaves or whatever the case may be. And
Misty.
if
Yeah.
I don't match what the rhythm section is doing because they catch me off guard by not playing the things in the keys that these songs are most normally called for, I'm immediately like not allowed to, like, or not even not allowed. I'm just considered like I'm disregarded for future being called up. And because the jazz community was so small in the Bay Area from like different venues,
Yeah.
like if I show up and I practice my ass off, no one would call me back up. And don't get me wrong, like I didn't need to be coddled, but it would have been really nice to have like somebody in like the rhythm section to just be like, hey, I heard you're having some trouble with this chord progression. Maybe we should like hang out and jam sometime, like just you and I,
Yeah.
and maybe work on that. Or maybe we should just like, do more gigs with me and you'll get better at this. But no, I didn't get any of that. But you know what was funny? The guys who would be fucking up the same way would get those extended offers for companionship
Yeah.
and developing their skills. And so, all to say, the jazz space became more and more like an unwelcoming space for me. And I got very depressed for a very, very long time. And I was just like, how do I don't even want to touch my horn anymore. Like, this is how sad I am. And there was a lot of time that I had to take to just like recuperate. And so, but one of the main themes that I kept in my brain, like while I was kind of dealing with like my depression behind all of it, and also not getting into the jazz bands that I wanted to get into, not only to talk about that, but also I'll talk about 7th Street in a second, is I don't want people to feel excluded the way that I have felt excluded before.
Yeah.
I don't want to feel like I'm not a part of the group no matter my skill set because of those jazz cats that made me feel that way. And don't get me wrong, there are some jazz musicians who I get along very well today. I'm actually going to hang out with a friend of mine this weekend who has been just a star in my life. Like, she's just incredible. But I was like, if I'm in a new space, I need to create a new opportunity for myself to be the most inclusive motherfucker that I can be, and to make sure that people are cared for no matter where they are in their life. And so that was something that I definitely appreciated. Or appreciated, like kind of like that turnaround in my mind of like making sure that like, how do I revamp this into from what felt like the end of the world to like to a strength, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things, kind of going back to MAGFest that I created was or started moving pieces for, is that we create a community orchestra for anybody at any playing level to just come in and play some like standards from the video game like
Yeah.
library. And it's mostly hosted by VVGO, which is the virtual video game orchestra or
Mm.
community or virtual video game, yeah, video game orchestra. Kudos to Brandon Harnish and Grace and Justin and Jose and Finney. Like they're just wonderful people to work with. But they would make arrangements to making sure that these pieces were accomplishable for even like somebody who's been away from their horn for years or somebody who is just learning. And yeah, even, yep. And
I
so
have
they
been away
feel
from
like,
my horn for years.
yeah, yeah, and you can just come in and just play some parts. If you know how to read an E, or for your instrument, you're reading an E flat. If you can read an E flat, you're fine.
Yeah, I mean, I need a horn first. That's I feel like that's a bit of a prerequisite, but I mean, that's a, you know, we'll get there.
Yeah. Um, we'll get there in a second. Yeah. Um, but yeah, like I basically asked them like, hey, this is something that I'm very passionate about. I want this to come to life. And they're like, yes, we will help you make this work. And so um they facilitate the whole thing. Like people sign up for an interest form. And the beauty of that is like once the performance starts to happen and rehearsals start to happen, like you see the orchestra and it's all these different people from all these different walks of life
Yeah.
and all these backgrounds. Like I had a friend of mine who became a DJ and she's like, oh, I'm going to get on flute and I'm going to just play flute with y'all. And I'm like, okay. And she did. And she was in
Nice.
cosplay and she was just wonderful and fabulous. And I'm like, she did that.
That's great.
And I also had another friend who I met through the Chromatic Brass Collective, which is another diversity initiative in the brass world. Which check that out because those women who are running that organization are the baddest bitches that I know, and I'm like so proud of them. But one of the members from that collective drove up from LA, and she's like, I was in the Marines and did Marine bands for a long time on the euphonium, and now I want to play some video game music. And this woman is like much older than both of us, and she doesn't even look like a day old over 40. And I'm like, hell yeah, like please sit down and enjoy yourself. And she brought her kids.
What do you mean
And
by day over 40?
she doesn't look her age. She told me her age. I'm like, I don't see it.
I'm messing with you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, of course. I'm also picking fun at you because you said you're 40. But yeah, she came in with her kids. Like this is a mom who came in with her children to enjoy herself and
Yeah.
gave this event a chance and like hung out and did all of that. And I was like, hell yeah. Like, so it was just really beautiful to see this like sea of people who just wanted to play video game music, wanted to collaborate and get along with each other. And of course, because we're nerdy, we're already like ostracized socially,
Right.
like to people who are not into the nerdy stuff. Like, you know, like back in the old high school days, like it like thrown in a dumpster or shit thrown at you because you're just into manga or whatever.
Right.
Which that actually happened to me, but I feel like we need another podcast to talk about this shit. But yeah, it was just really great. And so I was seeing to life of, because like this is a smaller event, we have an opportunity here to be more inclusive because like we're continuing setting the foundations on this. And like now, like when I think back on those larger events or on those other events that are not doing that, I'm like, this did not take heavy duty strategic planning. This only took asking people nicely to help me build something. And they built it.
This is
And it made it
Chromatic
work.
Brass Collective?
Oh, yeah. And the other organization is Chromatic Brass Collective. Yeah.
And then it's you mentioned Virtual Video Game Orchestra?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it's VVGO, the Chromatic Brass Collective, and then of course we're talking about MAG as well.
West.
Yeah. MAGWest. Now,
yeah.
You're the president of board for MAGWest or like MAGFest?
MAGFest Super. I'm the president for the full event.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's what I want to do. I want to take a quick break.
Yeah.
We'll just take a quick breather, and then we definitely should talk about 7th Street and a little bit more about your background as a horn player and as a musician and that kind of stuff when we come back.
Yeah, sounds great.
Folks, I am thrilled to announce that this episode has once again been sponsored by Vault 31 Bar. Vault 31 is a state-of-the-art shelter designed by the best minds in the business for absolutely anyone that's 21 plus and lives for all things video games and geek culture. If you need to quench your thirst after a long day in the wasteland, Vault 31 offers an incredible selection of beverages and signature cocktails to help you rehydrate. Or if you're hungry, they've got plenty of delicious options available from their kitchen, including their new Smurshbergs or my recently discovered favorite, the Bat Cave. Since they are a gaming bar, they have tons of PC and console games available to play. And whether you hail from the Brotherhood, the Institute, the Atom Cats, or the Minutemen, every nerd from New California to the Commonwealth is welcome here. Vault 31 is just off East Mill Plain in Vancouver, Washington, and only a short 10 to 12 minute trip across the river from the Portland International Airport. Be sure to visit them at vault31bar.com or at Vault31Bar on Facebook, Instagram, X, YouTube, and Twitch. Vault 31 is easily one of my favorite hangout spots in the greater Portland area, which is why I'm both flattered and excited to be partnering with them on bringing you future episodes of this podcast. Please be sure to check out their events calendar to find out what they'll be up to next. And when you do get a chance to stop by, please let them know I sent you. Maybe I'll even see you there. And with that, let's get back to the show. So you started with, when did you start with 7th Street, your band in San Jose?
7th Street. I talked about how I'm like, damn these jazz cats.
I saw a 10th anniversary thing. Were you with them the whole 10 years?
I have been, yes.
Okay.
So 7th Street's very special to me because we're very much so this kind of ragtag group of I don't want to say hoodlums to make it sound like we're all rebels or anything like that. But we're just a very special group of people who come from again, very different walks of life.
Yeah.
We're very diverse, but it was very organically diverse. There wasn't a strategy to, we want this person or we want this person. It was literally hey, do you want to play in this band? and that's how it started. The conversation started off in a Facebook Messenger chat being it was Gabby Horlick from East Side San Jose, wonderful drummer. Also, I'm grateful that she is my best friend, my ride and die. I miss her every day, that I'm away from San Jose. But yeah, I started with them, I believe it was 2012. So I was still finishing up my undergrad. I was still in college. That's what that means, undergrad and college. And I was barely 22 years old. And now I'm 33. So that band gave me so much life, where I felt really depressed. And I think even when I first started that band, I was at the top tier of my ability of playing bass trombone, which is the instrument I play regularly.
Yeah, we need to talk about that too, by the way.
Bass trombone's very, it's probably going to be the instrument I play for the rest of my life. But yeah, we started off, so Gabby didn't go to the same college as I did. If anything, she was still doing community college at the time. And when I met her at a completely different gig. I was also performing with this group called 19, led by Gus Cambites. Gus is a wonderful, just man of San Jose. If you want to know everything about the music scene in San Jose, you hit up Gus Cambites. He's just a wonderful man and wonderful person to know. And I was playing with his ensemble for a long time before getting involved with 7th Street. And Gabby subbed for the drummer, Bruce Campbell, at the time. And I noticed that she was another woman in the room because for 19, I was the only young woman of color. And then there was 2 other women in the band who played saxophone, who are also wonderful music people in the community as well. And I saw Gabby, who seemed like very close in age with me, and also brought in this really cool like red black kit and played drums wonderfully. And she just seems so fucking badass. I'm like, who's this badass chick? And so I came up to her and started talking to her, and I thought I fucked up. Like, you know, when you make a first impression with someone and you're just like, I fucked that up. They think I'm weird as fuck. Like, I'm never gonna hear from them ever again. Because Gabby
Yes, I've been there.
but Gabby's like, "Oh no, you seem cool too, and yeah, like I hope we see you around and all that stuff." And I was like, "I fucked it up. Like I'm not gonna have friends."
Um, quick aside, I
Yeah,
think meeting Weird Al was simultaneously the greatest and the worst celebrity encounter experience I've ever had. Because first of all, it's Weird Al,
yeah,
but also, he is so incredibly sweet, and he is such an incredible legend that will live on forever in music. Um, and I am such a schmuck that when I met the dude, and like all I really had to say to him was, uh, uh, your CD Bad Hair Day was the first CD I ever bought, and now I've been a professional DJ for, at the time, over 20 years. And I play your music any chance I get at events like this one, including the one we're currently at. I was literally pulled off the turntables to go meet Weird Al as like a surprise. And so I had to leave my turntables. So I took my my vinyl copy of his first self-titled album with me to have him sign it. Literally took it out of my crate, took it to have him sign it, took it back to my turntables, played it one last time, and I've had it under glass ever since.
that's amazing.
Um, but like my conversation with him was very like, I love you. You're amazing. I've loved you since I was a kid. I play your stuff all of the time, and I'm doing my absolute best to like continue to spread your gospel. And he was just like, he didn't know what to say to that. What do you say to that? Like, a normal person wouldn't know what to say to that. I don't know why I thought Weird Al would have something to say to that. Uh,
So
to
like,
this day, I'm
I'm
just like,
surprised he
man,
wasn't more
foot
sturdy
mouth.
about it. Yeah, like I'm surprised he wasn't more sturdy about it because that man is legend. Like if you didn't listen to Weird Al, you still know who Weird Al is. Like,
Yeah.
um, yeah, you just still know who he is.
Yeah.
Gabby, I would say after learning to know her and loving her as a friend, she's just very like a woman of few words.
Mm,
And so she's not like where I'm very like over embellishing everything. She is like very simple and direct and like that's just how she as a person and it works for her. And so like
right.
that's why I thought I fucked up because like I was overwhelming. And then I later learned she's like, oh no, she's just a woman of few words.
Yeah.
um
Totally get it.
yeah. And so yeah, so after that encounter, some months later, I get the messenger request about her wanting to start a big band. Now, it turns out that she has tried to attempt to make a big band, I think 2 to 3 times before 7th Street, and it just
Mm,
has not worked out. And she is somebody who has kind of grown up in the Title I school system in the Alum Rock School District, where they really love music and they have like a special department for music.
mm,
Um, and
mm-hmm.
so like those are kids who are kind of from like redlined areas in San Jose, like a
Yeah.
lot of Filipino, Vietnamese, Mexican families in that area. And but yet like there's a special sauce to what Alum Rock is doing with the music. Like every time I always hear great things that come from the music program because you always hear about their students doing really great things later in life with music. Like,
Yeah.
if you haven't heard of like Jonathan Borka, who's like a rap artist, spoken word artist, or Amy Dabalos, who is a jazz vocalist who is just like very notable in the San Francisco Bay Area. Oscar Pangilinan, who's also very notable in the San Jose jazz world. Those are people who come from like the Alum Rock school system. And so Gabby also comes from that school system. And so like you just see that there's just a lot of great like passion and talent that comes from that system, which is a beautiful thing to see because you want that for like kids who are coming from like marginalized systems.
Yeah.
So all to say, so Gabby has tried to do that with like some of the people in her community. She's tried to attempt it 2 to 3 times. With the gigging musician life, it's really hard to make people commit. And then this time she got lucky with finding a just a group of San Jose State music students to join her band. Like everyone who joined her band, with probably the exception of like maybe 5 folks, all went to San Jose State, including myself. And we were just all very hungry to play in big bands. And I think what was something that was not very spoken aloud about is like we were very excited to play in big bands together. I think we were just trying to find a way to find a community to play with people who were like kind of closer in age and like with things in common with each other. Because if you played and gigged with other big bands, it's just like, okay, this is just a gig. But this felt more special because it felt like it was with friends. It felt like high school again. It felt very close knit. Not to rag on like old people, because that's not what I'm trying to do here.
Right.
But you know, if I have a joke and I say a joke, like the room doesn't go quiet. Where if I say a joke with 7th Street, they're all fucking crying and laughter. You know, like things like that.
Right.
So yeah, so like we've been together for a long time, and of course, there's always been like ins and outs and changes with musicians. But I've stayed in my chair for all 10 years. We have accomplished 3 to 4 albums, 2 of them being studio albums. So our first album was called Off Cinderella Lane.
Mm-hmm.
And oh, by the way, the name, sorry, let me go back to the name. So the name for 7th Street came up because San Jose State is on 7th Street in downtown San Jose. And so that's how the name came up. We were kind of messing around with like 3 to 4 different names, and for some reason 7th Street stuck. And then later learning that 7th Street also belongs to like a reggae band in some different part of the United States. But luckily they don't have a lot of stuff going on, and they're not a big band, so we're good.
I know at least 5 other DJ switches.
Oh no.
and here's the thing. At least 3 of them are way more famous than me. Like way more. Like it's comical how much more famous they are than me. So like if any of them ever came after me, I got some ground to stand on with like one of them. But 1 out of 3 is not great.
That is fair. So with 7th Street, we have 3 albums. Off Cinderella Lane has one of my compositions in it called Damage Control, and that was kind of like the first for me to write an ensemble piece that included hip hop in it.
Nice.
So that's has Jonathan Borka, and like for a while, not to say like me doing that is the first of its kind, because it's not, but it felt very unique to me because I've always wanted to do something different while I'm learning in more of like a big band traditional setting. All of the teachers and professors I've gone through I have not seen them write with a hip hop artist at all.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I need to be different, and I value hip hop as a artistry and a skill, and I want to debunk all these myths on like how hip hop is perceived. And so I wanted to create this piece called Damage Control, which at first that was not the name. There's some inside jokes about the name being something else, but I will not share on this podcast because I want to spare somebody's name.
That's fair.
But then we turned it into Damage Control because it's a combination of me trying to fix a bunch of shit in the chart and also like changing the name. But then like now that the meaning with like kind of doing some damage control and how hip hop is perceived, I'm like, okay, like it kind of fits like in every angle that you're trying to make it work. So yeah, that was cool. Of course, I always had aspirations of like different rap artists on it, but like the one person who stuck with it was Jonathan Borka, and fantastic, fabulous, like 10 out of 10 job on the piece, like just wonderful human being, really like killed it. So yeah, that was our first album, and we did that in Fantasy Studios in Berkeley, California, and that's where folks like Little Richard to Green Day and other like very famous like artists have recorded there. I think that
Yeah.
studio now has been closed for a little bit, but we got to like, kind of be in like a historic like museum of recording studios, which is like very special.
Yeah.
We spent a total of 3 days just recording the entire um, album. And we all had a very much so like we had a good time doing it. And of course, what comes with like recording a big band album, there comes with like emotion and just like jokes and like feelings and all you can name it. But like we made a really good thing. And I feel like after like all the things of us going through it in the studio, like we did it. And also, I think it really helped kind of open up our eyes as artists, like we can actually do this shit. Because some of the people in the band I felt didn't feel that they were getting the affirmation that they could have been getting in music school. And the affirmation happened, the music happened in, or the magic happened, it happened in that studio, which was nice. So it kind of reminded us like we are here on this earth to do really great things. And we did that without the approval of people who are grading us for a degree. So that was really nice. After that, we've had a couple more albums. We have a studio album as well. And our last project is called Post Hang, which was released, I feel like, back before or after the pandemic. I can't remember. No, it was before the pandemic and or after the pandemic. I need to check my Bandcamp. It was released. Like, what is time after the world shut down?
The last 4 years didn't happen.
Yeah, like what? Like I was 28 and now I'm 20. I'm 33. I'm like, what the fuck happened?
It's still 2019 for a lot of us. It's fine. It's whatever.
Yeah. So yeah, so it's been a very special experience. And like I don't want to like drown out the podcast by naming every single person in the band and all the people who've named it, but like
Right.
I do think back very fondly about everybody that I was involved with in that ensemble, and I love them till this day. We had a lot of growing pains as adults, being in our 20s from like partying all the time,
Sure.
and now like us being adults and being a little bit more reserved in our lives. But hopefully my little sentimentalness is not like coming off as disingenuous. Like I really do appreciate everybody who I've worked with, because I feel like I was very close with them, that they were my chosen family.
So if you check out the 7th Street Instagram account, and you don't dig that far back, there is absolutely a video of you wearing an inflatable shark.
Yes.
Playing Baby Shark on your bass trombone. But I do, which was like really fun to find as I was like trying to like do a little research going into this interview. But more to point, I think that part of the reason why you and I connected so well, not just because of our mutual love of video games and music and video game music, but also there's a thing that there's a really, really like unique thing as from my experience as not just a saxophone player, but as a bari sax player. You're kind of like in a world of saxophone players, the bari sax player is the weird one, right? In a world of trombone players, the bass trombonist usually, let's go with, stands alone. And it takes a particular type of person, a particular type of energy to go, I want to do that. And I know this because I am that person. I experienced that the day I picked up a bari sax. I was like, I'm never going back. And so I'm a little bit curious what that was like for you and how that felt, sort of like coming to that decision and going, I think the bass trombone is that's my instrument. That's the thing that I want to do. How did you get there?
Yeah, so you're gonna be surprised by this. Bless his heart, Bill Tolles, who currently, he might be retired now, but he was my music teacher in high school. And he was the one who suggested that I get on bass trombone,
Mm.
because I suspect for inventory reasons. Uh, I also suspect because we needed a bass trombone player. And
Right.
when he presented this to me, I was like, absolutely not. I was freshman in high school. I was like, absolutely not. And so he had to do a little. So
I recall earlier in this very podcast, you said the bass trombone is probably the instrument you'll play for the rest of your life.
Yes, I did, and
Um,
I'm sticking with it. So I'll tell you the journey of like how I fell better in love with it. So this man, again, I really appreciate him as a teacher. He was also my first band teacher who was a man, and
Hmm.
at the time of me being an adolescent, I was not I was not a fan of male teachers. So like I was always very much so like wanting to like, how do I rebel against this guy? Um, and so he would just be very cool about it and just bring it up to me up until the point I said yes. And so um at some point he did mention that, like, I think he says, if you do this, you get to be in the jazz band after school. And that was the band that I wanted to be in,
Right.
because in middle school, and this is why I said when I had like a lot of potential, I was very good in elementary school when I first started the instrument. Like I started memorizing music and stuff like that, far more advanced than the rest of the kids in the class. And
Yeah.
then in middle school, I was fast tracked into their advanced band. I didn't have to go through the sequence of beginning band, intermediate band, and then advanced. I went straight to advanced band. So I did advanced band for 3 years in middle school, which the music is relatively like not that complicated, as an adult, like it's very sight readable, but like,
Right.
me as a kid, I'm like, I'm hot shit now. And so, and I also
I can
was
play the hell out of Turkey in the Straw. You watch me.
exactly, I'm like, Frankenstein, give me that shit, Um, Jamming with Charlie, I love that tune.
Oh my God.
If you
I
know,
haven't thought about that song. Uh,
So yeah, so I was also in the pilot honor band in 8th grade with Monterey Jazz Festival, their pilot middle school all-star band. And when I first played with them, I think the first oh no, I was in the pilot one for 7th grade. So when I first did it, I was like second trombone or third trombone, and then the 8th grade year, I think I was first trombone. I can't remember. So then now middle school, or sorry, now high school, again, thinking I'm like hotshot because I'm doing all this stuff. And this is me. I never took private lessons. I was very much so just like really interested in learning the instrument. Um, then so like again, inventory reasons, and also like, where do I put this girl? So my teacher
right.
is just like, how do I get this girl involved in my ensembles? And then I whatever. And so like at some point he was just very gentle, very nice about it. And then at some point I'm like, okay, I'll play the instrument because like it's the only one that you have left. And then I learned that I was going to play in fourth position or fourth chair, which to me, when you think hotshot trombone player is 1 and like loser trombone player is 4, I'm like, what is this? Why am I playing all the low notes? And I
Yeah.
didn't get it because I was like, I don't understand it. Where from an intellectual component, you're like, no, we need you to be the baseline so the whole group can tune to you. You
Yeah.
need to be on top of your shit.
Yeah.
This is not a loser space. This is a winner space. Uh, People are looking up to you. And so Monterey Jazz Festival, which I will always shout them out for this, is that they had a monthly clinician program where they would bring in these like very, very highly skilled professional jazz musicians to come in and like kind of mentor the kids on how to play jazz better. And so you had people like Peck Allman from New York, you had folks like Bruce Foreman from LA, and then you had Paul Contos, who is just like a wonderful saxophonist from Monterey County. And I met Robin Ami, who was a Berkeley professor, graduate, and Berkeley EE, 2 E's. and just a wonderful trombone, like woman trombonist. And she was also not only a tenor trombone player, but she was also a bass trombone player. And she kind of helped me understand like the beauty behind this instrument and why the bass trombone was so important. And so while I only got to see her like once a month, for the exception of maybe seeing her during jazz camp, which was a 2 week intensive, like, play jazz or whatever, she was the one who kind of mentored me to build more of an appreciation for the instrument. And then
Mhm.
later learning that I actually got a lot of opportunities from playing bass trombone because it is so specialized.
Yeah.
Um, and so my junior and senior year of high school, I was accepted into the All-Star Band, which is the kind of the regional honor band for the Monterey Jazz Festival high school group. And I did that for 2 years on bass trombone. I sat in that chair for 2 years, which was great. I made a lot of like friends from being in that ensemble. And I felt really good. And then I felt like this is my instrument. This is the instrument that belongs to me the most. Cause like not only that, I get to play these low notes and I get to be kind of like the person who sets the foundation for the rest of the ensemble, aside from like, the rhythm section and bass. Um, I also get to learn like the mechanics of the harmonic series
Mhm.
with like, using the utilization of different triggers. So it's basically kind of playing like three instruments and one horn.
Mm.
And also, playing low notes is a whole different like specialization. Like there's a lot of tenor trombone players who have
Mhm.
trouble being very flexible in the low register, and I have it pretty down.
Yeah.
So it's very, and it's kind of like celebrity status too. Like if you play something that is very bass trombone, like people know it's you. Where like maybe in the saxophone section, unless you're doing a solo, like people don't realize it's you, and same thing with the trumpet section. Like so
Right.
I got a little narcissistic with the attention, right? So like if I know I did something right, I'm like, I know I did something right. And I got some affirmation on it from it on the way. So yeah, that's how like my humble beginnings, humble. Um, and then I went to San Jose State and then I had a whole different reality slap in my face.
I had kind of a similar experience on the Barry, and I won't dive too deep just because like we're way over. That's fine. It's a podcast. No one cares. Um, uh, I found out very quickly that kind of like what you were saying on the Barry sax, you sort of like stand alone, and
Mhm.
I really was attracted to that. There were a lot of opportunities that were opened up to me as a Barry sax player that I probably wouldn't have been able to take advantage of otherwise. But I think the biggest thing that that you said just now that kind of clicked for me, um, when I picked up the Barry sax in 8th grade and I played the school horn, and it was fine. It was a school horn. They'd owned it for 30 years and no one took care of it, and so it was, it was awful. But it was a Barry. And my parents happened to sell our original house that year. And so, had some extra income from the sale of the house. And it worked out that there was an upperclassman when I was going into high school my freshman year at 14 years old. There was an upperclassman already playing the school Barry. And so if I wanted to continue to play Barry, we need to buy one. Which for those unaware, this was in 98. And I managed to score a Barry for like $4,000. They are minimum twice that now.
Yeah, yeah, four
Um,
grand is a steal.
yeah, yeah. But here's the best part. It was black with gold keys. And so I rolled up as a freshman in high school with a black saxophone, and literally everyone at every festival anywhere ever was like, I hope you can play that thing, man. Like I was getting comments like that where no one else was because I had the weird colored horn.
Mhm.
Um and it was crazy that like people would like there were hundreds of other kids, a bunch of other directors, you know, people that were just attending whatever, like jazz festival or whatever, like band festival we were doing as kids. And people would come up to me and then throw me like these really shady comments. And I figured out pretty quickly that they were just mad. They were just jealous. They were just
You're
like,
just mad.
kinda, because honestly, that
Why are
horn was
you
gorgeous.
mad?
That horn was gorgeous, and I could play it. So you know, be mad about it, bro. But that was that, like, after having that experience and then taking it with me to college, and the experience I had playing in college, like, I really wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. I did have to sell my horn in the mid 2010s. You know, being a working DJ at this point in my career, I'm okay, you know, booking gigs and kind of like squeezing out a living if I have to. 10 years ago, that wasn't really the case. It was tough. And so things happen. Sometimes you gotta sell stuff to make ends meet and whatnot. And so that, unfortunately, that was the case with both my alto and my Barry. And so, you know, one of these days, someday, eventually, I'll get another horn. I'll get back to playing. But in 2002, when I was in college and having to make a decision about which direction I wanted my music career to go, I had a very simple decision in front of me. It was continue to play the saxophone. And at the time, in the early 2000s, no one was hiring saxophone players. And they were being sort of like unconsciously phased out of pop music. And like, there was no representation really for saxophone players anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I imagine doubly and triply so for trombone players, in the early 2000s. You just didn't see that stuff on MTV or whatever. Like, it just didn't exist.
It wasn't glamorous, that's for sure. And
Yeah.
I think that's something that is really important on why, like, me learning about the BGM scene was so refreshing.
Yeah.
Because I stopped, not that I was gigging full time, but I had a lot of hustles, right, to stay afloat in the Bay Area. It's not, you know,
It's not cheap.
It's not cheap, and you had to be really affluent to really survive there.
It's the
which,
Bay Area, yo. It's not cheap.
And speaking of me being a transplant, that's one of the reasons why I'm up here. So sorry, and please don't come after me. I really try my best to respect this place. Like,
no, I think you fit in great up here.
But yeah, like, so I was like, I'm not really enjoying what I'm doing right now. Like, I don't even like I was having a moment, like, and I was like, not to say like this, I didn't disband from 7th Street, to be clear.
Right.
I stuck with them. Like, so if they had a show and I was able to fly in, I'd fly in and do it and then just come back. So like, they did not hurt my feelings. But I was not getting gigs. And so that I had to pivot in careers. So like, for a long time, I was a swim teacher. I've also dabbled in other like little weird side hustles. Then I actually, funny story, I accidentally fell into a pyramid scheme and I went, oh shit, this is an MLM. Let me get out of this. Because I thought what they were doing is onboarding and I was very naive. And I was like, oh, no. This is not what I thought it was. So
who
like,
among us hasn't?
Yeah. I'm like, what do you mean this is an intervention meeting? So yeah, like I got the fuck out of that. And so like, because I was trying to find things, like, luckily I did find like a career in nonprofits. So I am a nonprofit professional, like, aside from like my music side of things. So I do a lot of work lately in like what we call IDEAL, which stands for inclusion, diversity, equity, access, and liberation. And it's also much so in the framework of how I like to do things with my life, because I'm very like, I will say it till this day, and it never will escape my mind, is like, Black lives do matter and they always matter and they're not going to stop mattering. They're always going to fucking matter.
Yeah.
Say their goddamn names, say all the names, do not leave people out. Like, Black people have identities. We're not monolithic people. And so I was really running very, very heavy handed with that, especially in the early 2020, personally for me. And because I am Black, and I am Black, and I do come from a Black family,
Right.
like a Baptist Black family. Like I was like, okay, if I'm going to be in nonprofits, these nonprofits better be about like their diversity efforts, because here I am like standing an ideal with my current nonprofit, which they they're great because it's really expanded my understanding behind, you know, diversity efforts and stuff like that. And so all to say, like, I've really enjoyed the work that I've been doing. Like, I thought at first, like, oh, this is a side hustle to keep me afloat from like doing all the music stuff. But really, I've actually been starting to enjoy myself in nonprofits and being somebody who can potentially speak on like certain like aspects on nonprofit work,
Yeah.
from both somebody who has delivered programming
Right.
with San Jose Jazz to somebody who is working as like kind of like an executive administrator. And so yeah, I really do like that. But also, like, as for my music stuff, I had to recalibrate because I did endure a lot of like bullshit with my music journey. And
Yeah.
so, and this was after high school. This was like when I talked about where I got slapped with a new reality about music. So
Right.
I really had to recalibrate, like, what does music really mean to me? What does performing really mean to me? What do I want to get out of performing? Is this a chore? Is this something that I'm going to have to like just call it like, oh, I'm just tolerating this? Or do I want to reclaim my joy in doing this? And so, kind of pivoting to the nonprofit work where I took a break from my horn just to figure out, like, what do I want?
Hmm.
What do I want with her? Because I'm not going to quit. Like, I will say that, and maybe some people feel this way, but I do get anxiety for not being in a performance space for a while because it feels like something is missing, right?
Yeah.
And so I have to figure out like
Girl,
how
tell
to,
me about it.
yeah, sorry. I don't, sorry, I didn't mean to be Debbie
No,
Downer, but that's
no,
like,
I
that's the
get it.
experience.
I
Yeah.
completely get it.
So sorry, I know we're at time and we're trying to wrap up, but like
No, 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 no.
I had to really recalibrate and figure out like, what do I love about this? And so luckily, like I said, like kind of coming around the circle about like doing the VGM stuff, that reclaimed my joy.
Yeah. Good.
So the new projects that I'm kind of doing right now lately, so I'm in a recording band. We have very different names, but like we call ourselves maybe Dwelling of Dutes. We compete in a monthly series called Dwelling of Duels, which is led by Joe Newman. Like, praises to Joe Newman, by the way, because he's fabulous. But we compete in that, where what we do is, us as a band, we record some parts of some rendition of some video game theme. And the latest one that we did was a Final Fantasy flip, I think from Final Fantasy 6. It's the
Mm.
one where the where I think it's the one where you suplex the train. Oh my god, I feel like I'm misrepresenting it. But my partner in the other room is probably being like, "Girl, you know which Final Fantasy." I know, I know. I didn't finish the train suplex game. Oh no.
The
Uh,
train suplex game.
yeah, so we did that song, and then we competed in the Dwelling of Duels competition, and we won first place for that month. And
Nice.
so I know it's on Bandcamp somewhere. I think it's called Come On and Slam. It's produced by Eric WK, and it's on his account, I believe. So I can share that with you after when we're done.
Yeah.
That's really great because I get to play brass with a lot of like nerdy guys who just have like just like funny jokes, and like we get to like hang out and stuff. Another project that I did
Are
is
they in Portland? Is that a local group or is that
no, we're all over the place.
Oh,
So
okay.
we just record from our own home, and then someone takes our recordings and mixes it together, and
Okay.
become one comprehensive like chart. It's really phenomenal like work.
Nice.
Same thing with Vivigo. Vivigo does the same thing. Like, and that's the other band I'm in. So Vivigo will have these releases of when they do orchestral arrangements. And the latest one that was released was the bombing mission from Final Fantasy VII. And I also played bass trombone for that one. And
Right
then
on.
other things that I'm doing locally in Portland, I've been recently been collaborating with a band called Cartoon Violence, where they've been doing either ska renditions of things, or like they'll do like rap. They're a whole variety show. Like Blake
That
and
sounds
Victor.
amazing.
Yeah, Blake and Victor are just chef's kiss. They're doing great. But we just did a Weird Al Yankovic cover of Dog Eat Dog. And that was really fun to go to their house and record that. So I kind of became like an informal like recording artist, where if someone's like, I need trombone tracks, I'll give them trombone tracks.
Let me stop you actually. I think it sounds more to me like you've become a recording artist.
I probably can become a recording artist.
I don't think it needs a qualifier.
That's fair. Thank you for affirming that. I really appreciate that. So yeah, I've been kind of doing things like that. Same thing with Chromatic Brass Collective. Like when there's seasons when we do recordings, I will also record bass trombone with them as well. And we're just a group of like women of color who are from different parts of the United States and even parts of like Mexico and Europe, and we just put tracks together, mix them, and release them to the world. So that's how I've been kind of reclaiming some sense of joy in the things that I've been doing. I also led a project with Allison Martin with MAGFest, and we did a trombone choir. So these are things that basically took my mind off of the things that were very hurtful when I was playing my instrument, and I was managed to reclaim that into a version of joy. And that's something that the video game community has provided for me without having to make this big soapbox about it every time someone brings it up. But yeah, like I've been trying to come back out of my shell again to just be like, okay, I can do this and I can play without feeling like I'm ruminating on the past. I can think into the future, and I know that I'm doing a good thing with all the advocacy work that I'm doing, but also making sure that I'm taking time for me and making sure that I'm enjoying myself.
So just to wrap up what I was saying before, so I had a choice basically to decide, do I want to be a professional saxophone player or do I want to move the other direction? Because at the time I was like getting into DJing, and I obviously chose DJing because financially, opportunity wise, it just seemed like a bigger pool with more opportunity for success in the early 2000s. I definitely have some stuff that I want to talk to you about on the Patreon. But as far as the main show is concerned, I definitely want to give people an opportunity to check out MAGFest, MAGWest. Can you give us a little bit of an idea of like, where can they find you? Where can they find more information about the Music and Gaming Festival? And all of the really fun stuff that you're a part of?
Yeah, of course. So, my name is V. Also Veronica Tyler Christie, depending on how you're feeling that day. My previous podcast alias was Sometimes V. Fun fact. I also used to run a podcast, but we'll talk about that at a different time. So where you can find me, on most platforms, you can find me as sometimes _V. I'm on Instagram, Threads. I was on X for a while. I haven't been as active as I used to be, but like I'm also on X, or previously Twitter. Other things. Let's start with MAGWest. MAGWest is coming up September. It's the same weekend as Portland Retro. But it's the weekend of the 27th through the 29th in September this year. It's going to be in San Jose, California. So if you want to check out some VGM jams and some collaboration and intimate, conversations and, community building, please show up to MAGWest. It's great. You'll find me there. I'm very approachable. Please come up and talk to me. I'm always very fun loving, and I will always tell you the best things to go check out depending on the type of person you are. And then MAGFest is the big super event over in Maryland, which is in January. We just released the dates and the theme for next year, or for 2025. So just go ahead and check out the site and you'll see it there.
And that's January?
Mm-hmm. January 2025. 7th Street, find 7th Street on Bandcamp. Please support us through Bandcamp. We are 7th Street Big Band. Take a listen. Holla at your girl. And we're also on most social media sites as 7th Street Big Band or 7th Street _BB. What other things? I got a lot of things. But yeah, I think that's a good start. And of course, if there's any questions about more things about me, you could always, give me a holler through the DMs. Just be polite and respectful.
Sorry, one more time.
I said just be polite and respectful.
Just want to make sure they heard it in the back. Where do we find VVGo?
VVGo, yes. They have a Discord, which is on their website, so you can find them at vvgo.org, which I'll actually verify right now. Virtual video game, or if you just do like a general search. Oh yeah, VVGo. So it's vvgo.org. You can find their projects and ways to connect with them there. I highly recommend, if you are depending, it doesn't matter which level of musician you are, go ahead and join their forums. They're great people. Chromatic Brass Collective, you can find them at chromaticbrass.org. If you are a woman of color and you want membership with that organization, please go hit them up. Right now, memberships are just complimentary. Like, there's no cost or fee or anything. They want anybody who is just feeling like they need some forum about things that are going on. Please go ahead and hit them up. One particular shout out that I will say, just to help close us out, unless Switch, you have other questions for me to answer, is there's a resurgence going on about some, how would I best put this without trying to bring down the mood? But there's a lot of sexual assault allegations going on that are coming to light, and there's a lot of brave women who are coming forward with their stories due to the stories that were shared through French hornist Kara Kaiser. And while I do not know Kara personally, I will say that I'm stepping in solidarity to support these women by saying, by using this platform to say, support women, hear women, believe women. Me Too has not sunset. Me Too is loud and strong. And making sure, if you know of a friend who is struggling through whatever challenges that they were going through with anything that is related to such, please make sure you comfort them and empower them, and let them share their stories if they're feeling empowered to. But if they're not feeling empowered to quite yet, just give them space so that way they can bring things to light whenever they're ready. It's a serious issue with sexual assault in the community. And I commend all of the brave voices in that community for stepping up and saying something, because it is a real thing that happens in institutionalized spaces in music. So yeah, they have my love and support. So yeah, just making sure that you support them, support anybody who's going through it.
Awesome. Well, V, thank you very much for taking the time today. I'm gonna miss you at Portland Retro Gaming Expo this year, because I know you've got MAGFest going on down there. But we certainly are looking forward to hopefully being able to have you back next year.
Yeah, of course. I'm excited. If I want to volunteer at some point, so if someone's hit me up so I can volunteer with them, please, I'm happy to help.
I think I can put you in touch with some folks.
Yeah.
An absolutely humongous thank you to V for taking all of that time to have such an incredible discussion with me today. And I want to remind everybody, if you're enjoying this show, if you want to make sure that you catch new shows as they get released, please be sure to subscribe, youtube.com/DJSwitchPDX. Subscriptions really help me out. And I'm finally overcoming the subscribers that I've been losing because I'm no longer making the old type of content that I was making back in 2020. This new podcast actually just launched in February of this year, so it's still relatively fresh, and I'm finally getting my subscribers to sort of turn back the other direction, which is massive. And I cannot thank all of you enough for helping to support this show and helping me get this thing moving in a direction that's going to be more productive long term for the podcast. That being said, as I mentioned at the top of the show, there is an extended version of this episode along with another Lost Level entry, which is exclusive to the Patreon over at patreon.com/DJSwitchPDX. I'd love to see you over there supporting the show and also getting all the extra content. As I grow my Patreon, I'll be able to unlock some other options that will allow me to create more content and more opportunities for us to be able to connect, hang out with each other. I'd like to get to a point where I can get back to doing live streams. That would be amazing. But all of that really kind of depends on the kind of support that I can get from my listeners. So I want to say a massive thank you to all of you for staying and supporting the show and for listening all the way to the end of this very long episode. And of course, my thanks to V for taking the time to hang out with me today and have this incredible discussion. She's a phenomenal person, and I feel lucky to call her a friend. That being said, thank you very much for watching this episode of Pick Up and Play, and I will see you on the next one.